All right, hi everybody. So you just finished discussing the Tomb of Shi Huangdi, and you're about to do an activity about the next dynasty, the Han Dynasty. So I just wanted to say a few things. So I'm here on Tuesday night with my cat Lamont, and we're gonna teach you about this. So there is Shi Huangdi dies in 210, so he has something to use that tomb for. He apparently died, at least in part, because he was really obsessed with immortality, and so he had all these people like making like these elixirs that he could take that would supposedly help him live forever. The problem is a lot of these elixirs were actually like made of poison, such as mercury, and so therefore the fact that he died a rather early death is often attributed to the fact that he might have been ingesting poison in an effort to stay alive forever. Somewhat ironic. Anyway, within a few years of Shi Huangdi's death, the Qin dynasty is gonna go under. So I told you, right, in 210 he dies, in 206 the Qin dynasty is finished. And thus, you might think it's kind of curious that we spent so much time talking about a dynasty that only lasted for 15 years. But the reason we're doing that is this was a particularly important dynasty because of the legacy that it had. Because while the Qin dynasty only lasted 15 years, it fundamentally reshaped Chinese society in really enduring ways. Yesterday you talked about the standardization of writing, which would be really important for bureaucracies to be able to communicate over large distances. There are these big public works projects, roads, canals, that are going to be very influential in helping to facilitate interregional trade. And then perhaps most of all, we talked about we have this bureaucracy of salaried officials replacing the potentially rebellious feudal lords. And this strengthening of the Shi at the expense of the nobles is a very important legacy of the Qin rule. Because for the first time we have a truly unified China ruled by a centralized government in which the emperor living at the center actually has fairly decent control over all of the different bureaucrats living in the provinces. And I would say the true impact of Shi Huangdi and the Qin dynasty is shown by the fact that when the Qin dynasty crumbles, it doesn't devolve back into a whole bunch of feudal warfare, which is what has been going on for like 2 centuries. Instead, rather quickly, the Han dynasty is going to take over and then inherit the governmental infrastructure of the Qin. They're going to rule it as a centralized bureaucratic empire, relying on Shi instead of on the nobles, and they are going to rule for 4 centuries. And so while the Qin didn't last very long, it set the stage for the very successful Han dynasty. Alright, so I just told you that the Qin fell, but I didn't really explain how it did, so let me do that real quick. After Shi Huangdi dies, there's a power vacuum, a lot of people are going to rebel, and you might ask, though, given how strong of an empire the Qin clearly was, how did it fall apart so quickly after Shi Huangdi died? Well, as many of you asked and suspected, if you're going to rule in the way Shi Huangdi ruled, you're going to make a lot of enemies. And certainly there are a lot of people who are frustrated with the way the Qin are trying to run things. Certainly the scholars are not happy. There's all these people who have been told that they can't learn the way that they've been learning. They can't study their texts. They're having their books burned. Certainly plenty of people were killed. So the kind of intellectual scholarly class isn't happy. There are plenty of feudal lords who aren't happy. They've been defeated and totally disempowered. If they were still alive, many of them were actually killed. And commoners are also increasingly frustrated. There are endless demands from the Qin state for more labor, more taxes. And the story, actually, for how the rebellion started is that there are these 2 guys, these 2 peasants working on the Great Wall. They wake up late one day. They're not going to be on time for work. And they know that if they show up late, they're going to be killed. And so they just decide, well, if we're going to die anyway, let's go out fighting, let's rebel. Now, a story like this is like too cute to be true. I very much doubt it happened that way. But nevertheless, the fact that this story emerges, I think, is instructive about what happened under the Qin. You have punishments that are so harsh, at a certain point, people feel their option that remains is to rebel. I'll add that in addition to making all of these enemies, one of the problems the Qin dynasty had is that they spent tons of money. They're building all these canals, they're building all these roads, they're building the Great Wall. These are useful projects, but they cost a lot of money, and of course, building the Tomb of Shi Huangdi costs a lot of money, maybe not so useful. In any case, the Qin government is somewhat exhausted by 208, 207, 206, and ultimately there will be rebellion. Riots and rebellions break out all over the Qin realm. It's not like just one place. And some are going to be led by peasants, some are led by generals, some are led by feudal lords. And so the question will become not, will the Qin make it? It becomes clear pretty quickly the Qin will not make it. The question becomes, who is going to take over next? Is it going to split back up into warring states? After all, that's what's been true for hundreds of years, and that wouldn't be surprising. If it is unified, who's going to unify it? Will it be another feudal lord? Will it be someone else? The kind of surprising and interesting thing is that it's not a feudal lord. It's going to be a peasant. It's a peasant by the name of Lu Bang. Yeah, he leads an army of disgruntled peasants and ex-soldiers. He's a shrewd politician. He's able to build alliances, surround himself with good people, and eventually take over and become the first emperor of a new dynasty, the Han Dynasty. Rather unlikely hero. What I'll just say is, when he takes over and establishes Han rule, he's very careful to distance himself from many of the things the Qin had done. He canceled many of the harshest laws and some of the harshest punishments to make clear, I'm not going to be ruling in the same way. He pulled back a lot of the restrictions that had been placed on scholarly activity and the books people could read. And he also oversaw a sharp reduction of taxes. He basically cut taxes in half. And, these are all moves that are popular if people thought the Qin were overly oppressive. Nevertheless, he's still inheriting the Qin infrastructure in many ways, as we'll see when we talk about the Han governing style tomorrow. He is not going to have feudal lords running things in the Han. Instead, it's going to be these scholar bureaucrats who are part of a well-organized hierarchical bureaucracy. And so that bureaucratic structure that Shi Huangdi created is going to last into the Han Dynasty. In summary, I think what happened in the wake of the Qin is significant for several reasons. One, that even though the Qin was very short-lived, their system of governing, of replacing the feudal system with a bureaucratic system, is going to outlast them, and that is very important. Secondly, I think the fact that it was Lu Bang, a peasant, who took over after the Qin tells you how fundamentally Shi Huangdi had changed Chinese society. Right? Feudal lords have been running things for hundreds of years, and then when in 15 years of Qin rule, they are not the ones who take over at the end of it. It's a totally new person, a peasant. And I think that tells you why, even though the Qin dynasty was incredibly short, it was incredibly influential in reshaping Chinese society. Now what I want you to do is learn a little bit about the Han and how they ruled, and so there'll be some activities for you to do there, but first I'll have you write down some responses to about what I just told you about the fall of the Qin and the founding of the Han. Thanks.